Here almost second to last for the day, so thanks for hanging out and waiting on us. Wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit from some of the things we've learned over the last 2 days. You know, we've learned a lot about routing and the wireless features and the BGP functionality, which is a really good presentation yesterday. But we want to talk about cybersecurity with MikroTik, and that's really, you know, something that I think is an untouched gem, so to speak. Using MikroTik hardware to accomplish some of the latest next generation feature functionality that costs so much more with other vendors. So in my company, we have people who are certified in Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet, and other security vendors. And when we look at the features and the functionality of MikroTik, it's just incomparable, really, with what you can do. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we use MikroTik and then some of the things we're developing for MikroTik along the way. So first of all, my name is Troy Wilkinson, and formerly with the U.S. State Department for many years overseas. I first came in contact with MikroTik working in Eastern Europe. We use MikroTik in our IT forensics lab as well as some of our routing in the country. And you know, it was really easy to work on there. I learned a lot about it in the mission. But when I came back to the U.S., it was very obvious to me that nobody was really leveraging the chipset. At least it wasn't very public. So we've taken, you know, a stance that we're going to try to build a fantastic cyber defense system on top of MikroTik, and this is kind of what we're looking to continue to develop. In my company, we have between 8 and 10 software developers at any given time, and they all come from the world of building platforms. So we've built platforms for the United Nations, for Cigna and Walgreens and Blue Cross Blue Shield, and so everybody on my team has experience in building platforms. And so what we really decided to open Axiom for was to solve the gap in cybersecurity that we identified really early on. And that is updating is so important, and patch fatigue, as Brent mentioned earlier, is just taking over the world. So people are not patching, they're not updating their systems, and hackers are using that roadmap to get into our companies. So when a vulnerability is disclosed to the world, we know that it's publicly disclosed in many places, and literally for the bad guys, that's a playbook of how to break into companies. We saw with the MikroTik vulnerability recently, all they had to do was search the web for 8291 and see anybody running a system with that port open generally indicated that they were using MikroTik hardware, so they could come back with the exploit as the payload. So we know that hackers are scanning the internet 24/7 looking for different vulnerabilities and different ways to break into systems. WannaCry is a great example, leveraging Eternal Blue. We know that port 445 or server message block was part of the NSA leak that was leveraged to spread the WannaCry ransomware. And so, you know, we understand that hackers are hard at work trying to find ways into our businesses. And ransomware is a $1 billion business right now. So ransomware in the last 2 years has netted the hackers over $1 billion. And they're reinvesting that money in making their software better. They're reinvesting that money in making it more efficient. And so us as security researchers and security-minded personnel are really tasked with staying ahead of the latest hack. So we opened Axiom to do just that. We've created a platform in the cloud that basically takes in hundreds of different threat feeds. We have researchers that are looking at data every day, looking to create updates and update against what we call the next and latest threats. So Axiom's exclusively a cybersecurity company. Unlike most of you that I've heard here in the last 2 days, we don't do any ISP work, and we don't do any wireless ISP. We don't do any routing for our customers, although we do routing for our customers via the firewall and some of the custom deployments that we have. But core routing is not really our functionality. We are more of a cyber defense company. We do specifically intrusion detection and prevention using MikroTik, and we'll show you that here in just a moment. Denial of service mitigation, I've heard 2 talks on that here recently at the conference, different approaches, and I tell you, MikroTik is one of the best hardware devices to help you combat DDoS at a lot of layers, specifically the perimeter. We're always looking to identify ransomware, malware, spam, viruses, so that we can prevent them. One of the key uses of MikroTik is if we can identify any of the uniqueness of one of those attacks, we can block it. So you guys understand how effective MikroTik is at not only layer 7 matching, but also deep packet inspection, even layer 2 through 7. To our customers, most of them have never heard of MikroTik. We offer full management, configuration, monitoring, and reporting. So our customers are anywhere from small business up to large enterprises. We have almost every vertical from healthcare to finance, legal, gaming. We're in Las Vegas, so obviously that's a big vertical for us. But most of the people we talk to have never heard of MikroTik. They're used to paying thousands of dollars for a Cisco that can do the same things, or close. We also do the full gamut of vulnerability scanning and testing, as well as penetration testing. So if you think about, security architecture and how do I design my enterprise to be the most secure, we can definitely come in and help with that. And we're working on those continuous updates that we'll talk about in just a moment. And it all is backed by our threat intelligence platform. And polymorphic simply means it constantly changes because the attackers and the hacks are constantly changing. In fact, we understand that to get around antivirus in traditional sandboxes, malware authors are now having the malware itself be polymorphic. And that word is kind of new to the vernacular, but basically the exploit lands on your system. When you run it, it changes even a snippet of its own code so that the signature changes. So any signature matching antivirus is going to miss that. They're not going to be able to put a pin down on that. So we see polymorphic malware, but what can't change usually is the behaviors and the heuristics of what that malware, virus, or ransomware is doing and who it's talking to and where it's going. So we focus on those items that are more specific and harder to camouflage. We are an exclusively MikroTik shop. We don't sell any other hardware. We don't sell Palo Alto, Cisco, Fortinet, any of those other competitors, simply because we want to build our solutions on top of this chipset, on top of RouterOS. The flexibility that it allows us in deployment, the price point cannot be beat, the capabilities of using the deep packet inspection engines, the layer 7 matching, they're very, very accurate, and they're very, if they're programmed correctly, they're very useful. The ability to run scripts. Our developers are constantly finding new ways to leverage RouterOS and write scripts to update things and change things and make sure we're getting alerted, and as well as being able to connect MikroTik to our platform. We use the Hex series for our micro businesses and small office, home office. Those are great for people with 5 to 10 employees. We deploy those. The RB3011s are perfect for small businesses up to 150 employees. We have those deployed across healthcare, gaming, and other small to medium businesses. And then, of course, we get into the CCR series when we're looking at medium to large enterprises, especially the 1072 in the data center. I can tell you that we have a few Fortune 500 customers running the 1072s for DDoS at this time, and we're looking to expand that. But again, MikroTik's capabilities and functionality based on their price point, you can't get something that comparable for less than $100,000. The CCR 1072 is $3,000 to $3,500. A comparable Cisco would be $150,000 at best. So we talk about our threat defense platform. That is core to our offering. It allows us not only to update our MikroTiks, but also manage them. I heard a question earlier from the audience about how do you manage multiple MikroTiks. Our portal allows us to not only see all the devices we have deployed, but also log into them, manage them, see traffic graphs very easily from one centralized pane of glass, and then allows us to log in and manage them if necessary. Again, it's polymorphic because it's constantly changing. Our platform parses about 350,000 data points per day. We're getting those from sources we'll go over in the next slide. But those are open and closed sources. We pay subscription fees to some of those, as like Spam House was mentioned yesterday for spam and blacklist, blocklist, command and control servers. But we also work with private companies like Forkbomb, which is a honeypot company that has very good data on some of the behaviors of threats that are basically 0 days. One of the really cool things about MikroTiks as well is that they are great sources of threat intelligence. Because of the dynamic firewall rules, we can actually detect 0 days ourselves. And it has often happened that a client will have a large-scale attack, ransomware, DDoS, malware attack, something coming at them that it then pushes that information back to our platform so we can create an update that pushes out to all of our clients. We update these threat data points such as IP addresses, the hosts, the domains, the URLs, indicators of compromise, and others, and we deploy these in real time. So approximately once every 10 minutes, we're giving an update. The best part is that because of the memory on the device, we've never seen an impact on CPU usage or degradation of service because of these updates or these scripts. Even on the smallest hex device, we're pushing this data out and it's not impacting the throughput. We obviously don't hold 350,000 data points on every firewall. We update the newest, we remove the oldest, and we keep only what's necessary on there. One of those great points of data is the dark web. So we all know that the dark web is where most people hide their command and control servers, ransomware servers, and so on. So if you can block the dark web, you can block 90% of the malware that's coming at us. So we use obviously layer 7. We use, for cryptojacking, we're looking for certain keywords that we can block. But the Tor releases their endpoints or their exit nodes every 30 minutes. And as soon as they're published, Axiom's able to take those through our portal and update our clients. So in almost real time, you're protected against the dark web nodes. And that will prevent your employees, your clients from accessing sites that are hidden behind the dark web or behind a Tor node. And so, do we see actually compromised servers being used for malware? Absolutely. I mean, we've got to take different layers here. But blocking the dark web is one of the best ways for us to stop some of the things that are coming at us. So what are those sources? We have almost 100 now. These are the top ones that you may have heard of. We love Spamhaus. I understand that some people in this room have actually been on that list from time to time, and we've had clients on the list for many reasons. But they're a great source of information. Abuse.ch, if you haven't heard of them, check them out. That's a botnet tracker, malware tracker, etc. Forkbomb Labs, they're a honeypot service. They get some great detail on the not only the IP addresses and hosts, but the methodology of the hackers. Botnet trackers, HoneyDB, I think these are all pretty commonly known. But there are ones that we pay for, ones we don't pay for. They're open source, closed source, but they're curated by a team of security engineers and security researchers to make sure that they're going to be actionable and we're able to actually put protections behind them. We're not just putting addresses on your firewall for no reason. If your client or if you try to go to one of those IP addresses or one of those layer 7 matching URLs or domains, we're going to block it. And we get clients sometimes that call us and say, I can't get to X, Y, or Z. And it's because it matched one of our lists and that IP or that domain was actually on a blacklist. So they're very effective. These are the data points we're updating. And this is just at the firewall layer or at the MikroTik layer. Again, we integrate with a lot of other technology to accomplish next generation security. But I'm going to really focus on what we do for MikroTik today. And that is, we're updating the IP addresses of botnets, ransomware, malware, exit nodes of the Tor, which is the dark web, domains that are malicious or known malicious, different URLs that are known to be malicious. And so we can also update the layer 7 filter rules for ransomware, torrents, malware, and indicators of compromise. We'll show you that in just a second. And again, going back to why we were formed, the risk factor is from the time a vulnerability is disclosed to the world until you patch your systems against that vulnerability is your risk factor of a breach. And as time increases, so does your chance of being breached because of that vulnerability. Updates are crucial, not just for your MikroTik or your firewall rules or your security layer, but everything. As Brent was talking about earlier, Windows and servers, Linux, even Macintosh. Saw a statistic this week that Mac has surpassed Windows in the number of vulnerabilities that are out there. So people think I use a Mac, I'm not a target, but now there are more vulnerabilities targeted at Mac OS than there are for Windows. So hackers are jumping on that bandwagon trying to get into your data. But as you guys probably know, MikroTik allows us to dynamically add offenders to custom lists. And so we build tons of custom lists, port scans, DDoS, ransomware, malware, spammers. We build these lists, and MikroTik is able to identify them and then put them in the list for, let's say a few hours. And then if they repeat offend, then they're added for days. And then if they repeat offend enough, then they're blocked forever. So that's what we love about MikroTik, the ability to have that granularity and the ability to dynamically add things to the firewall. So this is how it works. We have these scripts that run every 5 to 10 minutes. Data collector scripts, malware updates, they all have their own purpose, but basically what they're doing is they're checking to see if there's any new data, how much data is out there, and then it pulls it down into the list that we'll be matching to. So this is just the beginning of the top of our firewall rules. I wanted to point out a few of these that match those lists. So drop to the Bogon list, which we all know, drop to the ransomware, drop to the Tor list, and then at the bottom you'll see the deep packet inspection. Might be hard to see here. This will be uploaded to the MUMS site, as well as I'll be happy to hand out these firewall rules as well. So if you email me, I will definitely send you a copy of these. We do some pretty special things with get peers, info hash, announce peers, some crypto stratum proxy DPI stuff that's going to identify your cryptojacking and to detect if you're Bitcoin mining within your environment. We have to turn that off for some clients because we do protect a lot of Bitcoin rigs and Ethereum rigs in data centers. And we just had one that became a client after 184 of their miners were hacked, and half the hash power was being siphoned off to fund the hackers. But at the end of the day, we want to normally block cryptojacking and cryptocurrency mining and any kind of activity around the blockchain or distributed ledgers. So there's some indicators in there that you can block with deep packet inspection. There's some traffic that you can identify, especially with MikroTik, that you can point to and say, we want to block that traffic. Our engineers, our software developer guys spend a lot of time writing this. I can't even hardly read it, but that is layer 7 protocols for ransomware sites. We do the same for the torrents and malware. And this allows us to continually update known ransomware sites, known CNCs, stuff that can't be blocked perhaps by an IP address, something that is from one of our source lists. You can see here that the lists continue to update. We have address lists that match these, obviously, ransomware, Tor, malware, whatever it may be. And so as the updates come in, they update the firewall address list. Then you go back to the firewall, you'll see those matchers, and if something hits these lists, it will be dropped. And the reason that we break these out by name is so we can give you a report of what actually is happening at your business. So these reports are all integrated with MikroTik. They show traffic, throughput, as well as what we're blocking, whether it's DDoS, ransomware, malware, dark web stuff. You can see month over month activity, or you can pull your activity all the way back to the time you started with us. So this reporting portal is tied into every MikroTik that we have put out in the world. And until today, we haven't had any MikroTik clients. But that's why we're here today, is to announce that we are pushing this out as a software service to anybody who has a MikroTik device. We can actually connect you to this portal. And again, with the management, the question earlier about managing multiple MikroTiks across the world, this portal will allow you to see them under one pane of glass, and you one click can manage it. Our dashboard feature is built to augment RouterOS. So obviously RouterOS and their web feature is very powerful. This is a little bit more high powered to give you some features you may not have there, and it can work either across the web or locally. What we like about it is we can program alerts and cool graphics to go behind some of the things that happen. Like, for instance, when you're under a DDoS attack and you have an attack on the bridge, it'll pop up a nice little icon here that'll tell you where it's coming from and what ports are affected and so on, so that you can quickly triage and find it. It has all the same drop downs that MikroTik has. You can add your BGPs or MPLS, anything that you want to do from the IPsec side as well, and your diagnostics and tools. This is a great graphic for your firewall, so you want to see what's happening in real time on your firewall, what rules are being matched. Maybe you have a problem you want to go triage. You can look at it here in the firewall. But I don't know about you guys, I use Torch a lot. I like Torch, but one of the biggest drawbacks to using Torch in Winbox is that you can't save the log. I mean, it doesn't go to a log anywhere, it's not saved, but with this you can actually save it off to a log. You can run it for as long as you need to and save it into a text file so that you can go back and look at the results. Again, this is the IP services tab. This is where you're going to see the ARP table, your DHCP server, how many leases you have, and have all the same traffic flow information that you might expect from Winbox. It just gives you a little bit more of a granular view. Our service starts today. Again, it's a a plugin for any MikroTik. How that works is it's an RSC file that we send you. It connects you to our threat intelligence database, and those updates are automatically pushed out. It's compatible with version 6.2 and higher, so we just haven't regression tested it enough to know if it works with earlier versions. But that's access to our threat defense system, and then we also have access to our reports and fully managed firewall, if that is of interest to you guys. But that's a pretty quick presentation on what we're doing with the MikroTik chipset. Are there any questions? Maybe we can go down some questions with the technology. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, two things. One, could you come back to, once again, the Tor side? You were saying that you take the data from Tor end nodes and you directly implement, because I kind of skipped that. And the connection, when somebody uploads the file, the connection to your servers, can you elaborate more on that connection and the format of that to the servers, to your servers?
Sure. So I couldn't hardly hear the question, but when you go back to the dark web and the connection to the service, is that the question?
Yeah. Better now? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
No. Basically, the question was one about the Tor. You said you basically take the data from every 30 minutes from the end nodes. Can you elaborate more on that? And the other one is connection from MikroTik to your servers, the format, encryption, and so on.
Absolutely. So going to the Tor, there are a couple of sites that actually publish those nodes as soon as they're made available to the world. We find that it's about every 30 minutes. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's not. But basically, the dark web or the Onion project, which started out as a DARPA project in the 80s, they're very open about their exit nodes. So you can not only find out what the current exit nodes are, you can look at software that'll tell you every exit node during a certain period of time. So if you want to find out if a IP address was part of the network at a certain day and time, you can look back historically as well. But those come in about every 30 minutes, published. And we update our system with them through our platform, which is basically a big data analytics engine that parses all this stuff out and compiles it into an update that is pushed out automatically. So to the second part of the question, these are the scripts that run on the MikroTik. Basically, they run and they look to see if there's a new version of the updates. And if there is, it pulls it down and it installs it. So somebody asked the question, can we even update these scripts with our platform? Absolutely. Anything that is on the MikroTik, we're able to update with our data collector. So it's a push, it's a pull, not a push. So we can't actually log into your device. It's actually your device calls out and says, is there a new version of the updates? If there is, send them to me. So you don't have to give us any access. We won't be able to log into your router. We're not going to be able to see your customer's data. All of the data that we're updating are simply metrics and IP addresses and URLs, so you don't have to worry about if you have a compliance need for HIPAA, PCI. We're not taking your customer's data. We're not looking at it. We're only updating the data points that we talk about here. So there's, we try to make it as non-intrusive as possible so that it's easy to deploy and as well as very effective at stopping threats.
What kind of processes do you have for, hey, someone gets erroneously blacklisted or something like that? Do you guys have a call center? Do you have a web-based mitigation process to get unblacklisted fairly quick and take care of those sort of things?
Absolutely. And we do have that from time to time where our customers are erroneously put on a blacklist or they're trying to get to a website that has been erroneously put on a blacklist. Our security operations center is open 24 hours a day. And so we have engineers there. If you call, we'll help you triage that. Like every source we have has a method to get off their list. Like Spamhaus, for instance, you have an email address for them that you can send, details, and they'll help you get off the list. I know that Conficker was a big problem for Spamhaus, and people were getting blacklisted all the time. You just have to make sure that you, eradicate the malware so that it doesn't happen again. What we find is Spamhaus will take a customer off the blacklist and they'll be back on it within 6 to 8 hours because the infection will show its head again. And so you just got to make sure that you clean up your systems. And as long as you can do that, Spamhaus and these other guys are very good about helping you get off.
Do you have, or do you have any plans to add any web proxy service to your?
Absolutely, and now that we are, looking at the community, I want to thank Rick for introducing me to the MikroTik community. Actually, we've been developing on top of MikroTik for almost 3 years under a closed umbrella. We never thought we'd be offering it as a service to MikroTik owners or MikroTik devices. We had always planned on doing this for our own customers, but after meeting Rick in Houston and learning a lot about the community, we want to make those features and functions that are going to help us all do more with the MikroTik chipsets. So web proxy we don't have today, but we can certainly put that in the development roadmap as well. And any of the suggestions or features that you guys are looking for, we're always looking for recommendations, and we'll put it through the team. And we have people working, around the clock, it seems like, on developing stuff for MikroTik. So it'd be great to not only spend our time wisely, but also making sure that it's meeting the needs of the community. Anybody? All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.